What's up, guys? It's your boy Lucky James here. So, I'm not really making this with the intention of anyone watching it. I'm more just making this as a forcing function to get me to decide what the hell am I doing with slopweaver. Um, so I've got like my private repo and spent like a few months building that. Pretty proud of what I've got there. Comprehensive SaaS app with a marketing site and a doc site and uh fuck ton of business logic and tests and all that good shit. And it's like a SaaS app, slopweaver.ai, all lives in that private repo. But a few problems with that. One, no one's really using it. So it's not really making any money or getting any attention. Two, I'm not using it, which really says something about the product if the creator isn't even using it. Um, and three, I don't think it's really future proof. I think that if I keep building what I'm building, it's just going to be superseded by Claude Cowork or some other app that does something similar um, and does it better. Um, so now I'm trying to think, well, should I pivot and maybe take a different direction, a different product positioning, target a different audience, or should I don't know, just abandon it and start a totally separate new project entirely? Not sure. What was the original mission with Slopweaver? The original mission was to make it so that I could um, essentially have an AI work console where all of my work is done. Any Slack messages that come in are then, tracked and responded to from there. Same with any emails, any Jira tickets, that sort of stuff. And it's a way where everything would always be up to date, all context always up to date based on the latest information coming via any integration. And essentially, I'm like, would be steering this kind of AI mecha suit to do a lot of my work. Um, it would start predicting what I might do before I've thought of it. So I guess going back a bit further, the story of how that came about. Well, um, at work, I had a lot of responsibilities, had to respond to a lot of messages, had to track a lot of different conversations and priorities, and try and not let things slip. And when AI, was coming out, I was like very early adopter, I guess, on like Cursor, Claude Code, that sort of stuff. Um, and I found that um, it was actually pretty efficient for me to, go into Claude Code, connect it to all the different integrations via MCP or whatever, and then whenever like there's a new, I guess, work stream, you might call it, um, you know, like, hey, Lockie, we need to, uh, I don't know, secure this application or something like that. Um, then all communications and all happenings in relation to that work stream could usually be tracked in a single Claude chat, or resumed in subsequent Claude chats. And so then that made it so that uh, say I start work on Monday and it's been the weekend, I can essentially just run a command, like a slash command, and it will say, all right, Lockie, here's where you were working on. Here's, you know what, fuck it. I've got my work computer next to me. What would it actually do? So if I run the slash command for, like resume work, essentially, what sort of stuff comes up? It'll read through all my different local context because all the context is being tracked in markdown files and supposed to be kind of self-updating, whenever I'm doing work or having conversations or etc. And this one command should be able to go and read through all those markdown files and say, all right, Lockie, here's like what you need to work on today. And it's usually fairly accurate. But of course, it being accurate depends on, having access to all the latest context and yeah, because it's just like something that's on my computer. It's not like a live SaaS app. Having the latest context is really depends on me getting it to read certain things or me providing it specific information. So say for example, I run that start command and it's like, all right, Lockie, here's what you recently shipped. You did PLT-571 merged in PR number 10333, where you got the yogurt and envelope hotel bypass fix via blah 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 blah. Oh, and you also did the pool exhaustion audit and ships and fixes for that. But here's the next actions. You need to address the feedback on PR number 9575 because I need not read out people's exact names here, but John said, hey, you need to pin the version on this particular dependency, and Code Rabbit flagged that you're missing a role in your service account, and um, James said that, hey, Lockie, that dashboard you made should be sliced by the GraphQL operation name. Anyway, that sort of shit. That sort of shit. And it's really good because what you essentially end up with is like a context as code mechanism where code is like, context is essentially version controlled. Similar to what you do with infrastructure as code. And it's also good because it essentially allowed me to work more efficiently if I did not have to use only my brain to do work. If I could offload some of that thinking stuff, prioritizing stuff, etc., to an AI, like a general personal AI assistant, who is aware of all my work and my context and my priorities and all that, then I would be able to work more efficiently because instead of me having to, like, let's say, new message comes in, I gotta resume context in my head. I gotta remember, okay, what was the last thing we were doing here and what was the priority there again? And what were the other factors at play? Whereas here, it's a lot more just AI suggests, I approve. The AI suggests, hey, Lockie, I think this is your top priority today, and then you need to send this message to that person, and then maybe I look at it and say, you know what, based on all the information available, I actually agree that is my top priority today, and I would send a message somewhat like that. You see, AI suggests, I approve. But then Slopweaver was essentially born out of that, where I'm thinking, hey, I could take this like, AI work console that, I mean, that's what I call it, but really it's just like Claude code in my repo on a dedicated branch with a bunch of markdown files in the .claude folder. Slopweaver was essentially supposed to be making like a SaaS app out of that concept, thinking, hey, instead of me having to, um, you know, run a command and get it to fetch all the latest context, what if I made it like a bit more push based, where anytime a message comes in, hits a webhook, um, and that triggers the updating of context. And then this way it becomes like, instead of me going in and, every time, kind of, what am I saying? Instead of me having to, um, steer this like mecha suit, this AI work console, um, no, that's still not what I'm saying. The idea was it could automate the parts that were still not yet automated in my Claude Code AI work console setup. That's pretty much it. And also putting like a nice user interface around it. Um, yeah, but there's a few problems with that. One, uh, lots of people are probably building something similar and have more money and manpower and marketing and talent than I have for building Slopweaver, and they will beat me. Two, um, Claude Cowork is already better than what I'm building, and probably everyone's just going to use that instead. There's like, by the time I built, well, even just now, like if I open my app and then I open Claude Cowork, I'd probably prefer Claude Cowork. I prefer the way that it's a lot more open ended, a lot more agent. I mean, it is an agent, literally. It's agent based, and pretty much anything that I'm building on Slopweaver is going to be doable by Claude Cowork. If not now, then within a few months. Um, and this is a problem for anyone trying to build in the industry, I guess. That you build, your AI SaaS application using like all these cool AI tools, only for the AI to release new tools and new features that then make your application redundant, obsolete, superseded. Um, so I'm not the first person to run into an issue of like, hey, I'm building this SaaS app, but I think that, the AI company, Claude, Anthropic, OpenAI, whatever, is going to make my product obsolete when they release a new feature. Anyone building here is probably going to, especially anyone building in this sort of domain is going to have that problem. And so then how do you control for that? If you know that there is this company that's going to keep releasing features that essentially make whatever you've built obsolete, then, but you're also building around that company, what do you do? It kind of seems like just a bad business move, really, to try and do that. And that is essentially what I did with Slopweaver. I said, all right, yeah, Claude Code is cool. Claude Cowork to be fair, I think Claude Cowork was released shortly after I had already started building Slopweaver, not beforehand. But looking at it now, it's like, yeah, okay, that pretty much does a better job at whatever I was trying to build, and everyone already has Claude installed, um and yeah. So to build something a little more future proof, uh, do I have to switch directions? Do I have to pivot to something totally different? Um, or is there still something here? Because I did build for, several, I'd say like maybe 6 months. Um, Spent like a lot of time building and theorizing and doing what I felt like was perfecting slopweaver as a product, but I don't really have a whole lot to show for it in terms of, acquiring users um and attention. And even I'm not using it. What does that say? So this all isn't just dawning on me today. Um, it's been like a threat in the back of my mind for a while, and I think like, was it like a month ago? Maybe it was a bit more. I was thinking about this, and I was thinking like, you know what? Maybe this whole closed source AI SaaS idea is not really what I should be doing. Maybe instead I need something a bit more like a post hogs model where it's all open source and there is like a self-hosted option, but there's also like a cloud-based option. Um, and a few reasons that would be good. One, open source is awesome, and it probably makes people a bit more confident about, you know, using my app if they can actually see the source code and you know see what other people are saying about it. Two, even if I don't have much to show in terms of like a user base or marketing or whatever, at least I would have something to show in terms of the code. Like I kind of hate that I made it all closed source because generally that's how like SaaS is closed source. If you want to make money, don't give the source code to everyone. But now I'm sort of like, well, you know, I'd rather give the source code to everyone and have people use it rather than not give the source code to anyone and have no one use it. You know what I mean? If that is the dichotomy I'm living in. Um, and then three, uh, I think self-hosted is probably where a lot of things are going. Oh, and four, people would have to pay a lot less for my SaaS app if it was bring your own key. Yeah, back to number three, the self-hosted aspect. Yeah. So with my Slopweaver app, one of the big frictions to acquire customers is the fact that it's storing a lot of your sensitive data and getting AI to read it. Like, throw your privacy laws and shit out the window. The whole point of this is that it knows as much about you as possible, and it's not really designed for the privacy conscious. I mean, obviously it has to be secure. Um, I've got my own data in there, and it's connected to a lot of, my Gmail, my um, sensitive applications. So, of course, like security is a big concern that I've put a lot of work into, and I'm DevSecOps. I'm a DevSecOps engineer, so of course if I'm going to put my all my data and connect, Gmail and Outlook and all that shit, my personal ones to like this production app, you better believe that I've made it so it's relatively unhackable. Um, but then getting other people to do it, that's a different story. You know, how many people are going to say, "Oh, okay, random SaaS app with a silly name who no one is really talking about and has very little online presence. I will give you access to my Gmail, my emails, my my company data and all that." That's a problem. That's that's a massive source of onboarding friction. Um and I've been the DevSecOps at a company who has to like essentially approve or deny requests for staff to bring in new applications. And if I was the guy who had to approve um someone saying, "Hey, I want to use this thing slopweaver and connect it to all the company tools and use it to help me with work," I'd have to say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Where is their SOC 2 certification? Where is their ISO certification? Um, do is there any reviews at least that look um like they were written by real people um for this company?" It would be an instant no, essentially. So what I'm building, I doubt, at least at this stage, that I could really get most people who work in this field to actually use at their companies, because the IT will probably say no, it's too risky. Um, so just another thing that makes this maybe not the best idea. Um, hmm. And the self-hosted aspect, I think, is quite nice because typically, if you're self-hosting, then there's a lot less requirements around the security and privacy stuff. Like if all your data is just stored on your local machine, you know that's basically what people are already doing with AI, with Claude Code, who work in this field. So I think a self-hosted option is probably something that would be a lot more attractive um, to, I guess, my target audience. And my target audience is basically me, or people who do work like me. Um, yeah. Oh, and I guess another challenge here is that I am not a marketing guy. I don't really see myself as like a CEO guy. I'm a builder, and I love building products or whatever with code, but I suck at marketing them, and I suck at like I don't know, telling people about it, I guess, or stuff like positioning and shit. And probably a lot of the concerns that I'm raising today should have been really thought about months ago. And if I was working with someone else, they probably like maybe part of the reason I'm 6 months into it and now feeling like, this is stupid, I need a pivot, is that I've been working solo and having sycophantic AI models telling me, yeah, really cool what you're building. Um, so working with another human being with well, business sense, marketing sense, um, is probably one of the most beneficial things I could be doing. Um, because they would fill in those gaps and challenge the direction of what I'm building. Um, And that's something I actually looked into not long ago. There's this company called Antler, who is like a startup accelerator, and so I applied with them and said, "Yo, I'm Lockie James, and I'm building slopweaver, and it's supposed to be this AI work console where you can do all your work in there, and it tracks what you're doing and can eventually predict what you're going to do before you've even done it." And yeah, and I met with them. First meeting went well. Second meeting, not as well, because they were sort of asking, I mean, asking the questions that an investor would be asking, you know, hey, why is your product going to, you know, stand out above the rest? And why is your product going to, um, you know, uh, survive like the next couple of years of, you know, new AI SaaS going to market? And my answer to that was pretty much, yeah, well, my what I'm building is sort of like Claude Cowork, but theirs is more like pull based, where you have to like type and get it to like go fetch information for you and all that. But what I'm building is more push based. You know, you just open it, even if you haven't looked at it for days, and it already knows. It already knows what you've done, what you haven't done, what has been missed or dropped or deprioritized, and what your priorities are. Because, well, every single message that came in, every single ticket update that happened, every single email that was sent across all of my tools was all sent to slopweaver because it's webhook setup. So yeah, hey, my one is more push based, and theirs is more pull based. Well, you know what? Anthropic, Claude Cowork, they'll probably release a feature if they haven't already to make it more push based. And there goes. I think they already have something like that. I think if you open Claude Cowork, there'll be like, automations or something along those lines that you can get to make it either poll for new information across your integrations, or maybe some kind of webhook setup if you want it to be fancy. But I think just polling is, I mean, honestly, it's just as good in most ways as anything, webhook push based. Um, so yeah, pretty much the end of that antler meeting, even I said, you know what, even as I'm saying this out loud, like what I'm building, Claude Cowork is going to eat this. And I did not get taken through to the next round. Which is a shame because with Antler, pretty much their whole model is uh, matching co-founders. You know, a good example is you have a builder like me who maybe lacks some business sense and marketing sense and all that, and then you pair them with someone who's a bit more of a Steve Jobs type. They don't build, but they can talk and get people excited and see direction and all that. Um, and so that I feel like is what I really needed for here, but it did not happen in this application. And also, I don't want to be the Steve Wozniak to someone Steve Jobs. Anyway, I think I'd rather be riding solo, uh, but at the same time having people actually use it. Fuck. Hmm. Where am I going with all this? Oh yeah, right. Choosing a new product direction. Well, I'll probably take the transcript of everything I'm saying and dump it into Claude and get it to like propose some new shit. Um. Uh. Yeah. Fuck. And then I'm paying for shit. Like I'm paying for railway. I'm paying for Superbase. Paying for like the on my personal account, Claude Code and Codex and all that on the max plans for both because like that's how fast I was building. But like, what does it matter how fast you're building if no one's gonna use what you're building and you just throw it in the bin? Um, and then that just is a painful reminder of other things that I've built where they suffered exactly the same fate. Back pre Chat GPT, I built an Android app called Conversation Assistant because I'd seen the power of GPT-3 and gotten really excited about it, and felt like I'm early to something that's going to be the next big thing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to build a conversation assistant because me, you know, um, often like a problem that I have personally is often struggling to reply to messages and just hyper scrutinizing anything that I'm going to type out, typing shit out, backspacing it, typing shit out, backspacing it, um, or just ignoring a message because it feels like too much mental strain to go through the process of responding to it, which is obviously like a social anxiety thing. Um, and um, so I built a product to solve that problem. I built Conversation Assistant, and it's on Google Play, and it got like over 1,000 downloads and a few paying customers. Um, but then for whatever reason, I felt like it didn't take off the way I was hoping, and I am just going to abandon the project now. I don't think this one has a future. Um, and unfortunately, if I had have kept on with it, I probably could have been there was potential for success there because one, I was pretty early, as I said, pre-chat GPT, a mobile app that uses like GPT-3 API to help you respond to messages based off like some input fields um, and all that, and being able to work across any messaging app on Android. Um, it was a good idea, and I know it was a good idea because other companies actually succeeded with doing something similar to that after, and probably made a lot more money than I did. Um, but I think that's been largely superseded now, the conversation assistant type app, and instead it's more just a general agent AI chat app where you discuss concepts and the AI might propose sending replies, draft replies for you, but you don't really want a dedicated app that's only for helping with conversations, I would say. Because you know what else can do that? Gemini can do that. They can suggest what to reply to an email with. Copilot probably can too. Slack AI probably can too. All this has been superseded by companies just who already have tons of customers and tons of data, just building that feature into their product. Come out here, baby Bard. Come out here. Come on. Hmm. So so then when I think about that experience with Conversation Assistant, like I feel frustrated because I feel like I was close. I had done a lot of the work and I could have been successful had I just not given up and had I really stuck with, the the scary part, hey, here's what I built, now criticize it. Here's what I built, what do you think? Hey guys, I built this thing. Do you want to try it out? Free trial. Getting people to use it and give real feedback. That is the shit that I struggle with and is the exact same struggle I'm running into now with slopweaver. And it kind of feels like a history repeating scenario if I just abandon the project now and say, whatever, I'll build a new project later when there's new features and nothing can supersede it and whatever, you know? And I don't want to make that mistake again. Um, and when I was originally building these products, I think one of the big goals was money and fame, you know? Money because uh I want financial freedom for my family. And fame, I mean, fame amongst my peers, I guess. Because it's it's validating to have an online presence, an online identity as, a talented software developer or someone who built a cool product. And because I don't really post much online, I pretty much just lurk. Um, After 6 years in software development and building some side projects, I don't really have too much of a social presence to speak of. Um, and I really felt that a few months ago when I got laid off. Um, because I was laid off from a job that I'd been at for 4 years, and then I was thinking, you know what, this shouldn't be too hard. I've got like all this good experience. I should be able to get a new job. And I did not realize how painful it would be to get a new job um, when you don't have a strong online presence. Because even though you have the experience, that's not good enough. And it's not even like the problem is anyone can say it, they have the experience. I did not have enough to show for it. If I had this online presence where you Google my name and you get like this long list of, known products that I've built and had like, people talking about me or talking with me or even just, I don't know, an online presence and a bit of a following, then that probably would have helped a lot more than any resume or cover letter when it came to finding the next job. But I didn't have those things. Um, And part of the reason is that one, I've been closed sourcing all this stuff. So the conversation assistant, where's the evidence of that? There's a Google Play app, but I don't know if your code's shit or if, it's stolen or whatever, or if it's just slop. And same with Slopweaver, it's closed source. Where's where's the proof that this guy can actually code? I'm not going to actually sign up and use his app to find out if it's any good or not. I just want to see some evidence, some social proof, perhaps, that this guy actually knows what the fuck he's talking about. Um, and so yeah, I I I think after being laid off and having like 3 months until I actually was able to like get a new job, um, really kind of opened my eyes to the fact that um I've been aiming high with $1 million SaaS app, but I've been falling real short in ways where it's like I essentially have nothing to show for it. I feel. Um, I mean, yes, there's an app that's on slopweaver.ai and like people can go and use it, but I don't think people would. In fact, you know what? I haven't even looked at like my analytics for a while. Let me see. Last time I looked, there was 13 users. How many we got now? 13 users. Yeah, okay. Not a single sign up for over a month. Um, so, oh, and to be fair, I haven't posted about it anywhere for over a month either. Because, well, it's been a busy month and I've had a lot of personal shit to work through. But now I'm kind of, coming back to it and I'm thinking, hey, I don't think picking up where I left off is the right move here. I feel like picking up where I left off is taking me to a dead end, and it's actually time to pivot. Now, what are my options for that? Well, I could open source the whole SaaS, the slopweaver.ai SaaS. I could just throw all the source code on GitHub after, well, I'd have to make sure I go through and just purge anything that could potentially be used against me, any PII in the code or whatever. Um, I'd have to um, then figure out how I'm going to like secure it in more ways than I currently have because if you imagine like you make it open source, you got to worry about people forking it and running like their GitHub actions on maybe having access to some stuff from your original repo. Like I don't know. I've just seen there's a whole lot of ways to attack an open source project that I would want to think about before I open source. Or I could build something else entirely from scratch, but it would be a shame to turn my back on 6 months of work. Um, but I don't want a sunk cost fallacy either. Um, I could also um, try joining in on someone else's existing project, be an early co-founder. But also, I just got a new job and I don't want to be working two full-time jobs. I know overemployment works for some people. I don't think it'll work for me. Um, you know, this is still a side project that I have ambitions for, but in some ways, I still like it having it as a solo project that I can, potentially make money from, um, but like still, have number one priority being like doing good work at my job because that's really important for me too. Um, hmm. Um, and I'm remembering now that I pretty much did something very similar to this like a month ago. not like, getting on YouTube live and having an incoherent rambling sesh of the world, but more like rethinking, what am I building? Is this the right direction, etc. And ended up landing on something where I essentially started rebuilding from scratch in a open source repo. And I ended up actually renaming my old repo to slopweaver dash private. The repo where the actual SaaS app lives. And then making slopweaver public, this open source project, which I would then be going from scratch in there, and I'd be going for something that is more of a self-hosted setup and is something that maybe instead of trying to, be used instead of Claude Code, could be used with Claude Code in a way. Um, you know, um, like maybe asking people to switch from like Claude Code for an AI work console, which is still actually what I use, by the way, and instead come and use my online SaaS app, is maybe, you know maybe too much of an ask, and maybe something that instead just is more of like an extension on Claude Code could be better. But then how the fuck do you make any money with that? But then also, I'd rather have people use it and not make any money than have no one use it and not make any money. So maybe the whole $1 million dream needs to be put aside for now, because that keeps putting me in a situation where I build in private and I don't have much to show for it. Um, but yeah, I built this public repo, and I can't even remember what the fuck I was doing with it. I was making it into what, an MCP server? Because, oh yeah, hey, if you want to build something that wraps Claude Code, you're fucked. Anthropic keeps updating their terms of service, and essentially, like, OpenClaw did that. They got killed. And there was a few other projects which are doing something similar. Essentially just wrapping Claude Code as I think they call it like an agent harness. Um, and then Anthropic updates their terms and conditions and says, no, you can't do that. And they put in protections to make it so, yeah, if you were using an agent harness um, around Claude Code, then um, then they're essentially going to block their product from working in it. Which is a real shame, because a lot of people were probably having the same thought process I had, like, all right, if you can't beat Anthropic, just join Anthropic. And then Anthropic's like, no, you can't even do that. You know? All right, maybe that wasn't the best analogy. Um, Other people are having the same process of, hey, maybe I can't make a SaaS app that people use instead of Claude, but maybe I can use something that kind of wraps Claude or plugs into Claude. And then Claude essentially said, no harnesses. And sure, whatever terms of service they have now, there probably is still a way that you could build something that in a way is wrapping Claude, but in a way that doesn't violate their terms of service. But the problem is, we're in the age of enshittification, and those terms of service are going to keep changing and getting shittier and shittier for anyone who wants to build and like me, essentially. And so, if we're in the age of enshittification, and I think a lot of people and a lot of my peers could probably see that when it comes to, like, AI stuff. Um, and when I say the age of enshittification, I mean like the product like the AI model maybe keeps getting better, but the product offering gets worse. Like say for example, rate limits, um, being much more strict, or this terms of use being more strict. You can't use an agent harness anymore, which is a shame because a lot of people really liked OpenClaw and probably similar products. So if you're looking at enshittification, then maybe the best move is to actually step away from the Anthropic ecosystem and look into the alternative models, the cheaper models, the ones who are not um, able to enshittify, or are less likely to enshittify at this stage. Um, and if I do that, I'm probably going to be dealing with a lot more open source stuff, but which is good. But then also like the capabilities of other models compared to Claude for what I'm doing, I don't know if they're there yet. Um, I've heard like GLP at 5.1 was supposed to be like something that can do pretty good job at like talking to you and maybe leading you through your AI work console stuff, but I haven't tried it myself. But hey, if it's if I am seeing all these problems with Anthropic, maybe we need to take some lessons from like other examples of enshittification. I mean, look at Adobe. They made, what was it? Photoshop? Creative Cloud, whatever. There was Adobe Creative Cloud or whatever it was, and they were doing the enshittification. They were, they'd made a good product. They had most of the industry using them for their designs and stuff. And then the essentially, you know, the finance people start making all the decisions and saying, all right, let's make it so that we charge more and give less and use dark UX patterns, like making it difficult for you to cancel or making it so you have to pay the rest of your year to cancel. And then everyone, even though they had made the best product, everyone just fucking hated Adobe and still do, and went for Figma instead, because then they had built something that was uh, almost as good, better in some ways, without the enshittification aspect. And now Figma's doing great. And I think a lot of people probably switch from Adobe to Figma. Now, a lot of this is off the top of my head. I've not fact checked any of this. Um, and so that's a good example of like big bad company who has all the market and then gets greedy and starts like fucking over the customers. And then a new guy pops up and says, all right, we do what they do, but we don't fuck over the customers. And everyone jumps ship. You know, I think there's a lesson there, and I think Anthropic is going the way of Adobe, where they are going to fuck over a lot of the customers and already have in some ways, um, in terms of tightening the rate limits and um, putting in these stupid restrictions around agent harnessing. So maybe I should build, I should do what Figma did and say, hey, maybe I take myself out of the Anthropic ecosystem and I try and compete with them by using, I don't know, some other method, something, either a different model, like a much cheaper one that's not like OpenAI or Anthropic or Gemini, but instead maybe like one of these open source models or these open weight models. maybe that could be the angle. Um, and then when everyone gets so sick of Anthropic, um, for just getting shittier and shittier, um, then maybe they start looking for alternatives, and I can be there, like, hey. But then again, Anthropic does more than just build, Claude Cowork. They build, the frontier AI model, and so like you can't really. Mm, what am I saying there? It's not enough to just like, compete with Claude Cowork, um, but use a different non-anthropic model under the hood, because I feel like that's not going to. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Maybe it's just time that I took this transcript and ran it through AI and see like if there's anything there. Can you pause YouTube Live? I don't know actually. Can you pause a live stream? I don't usually live stream. I don't even know why I'm live streaming. The fuck am I doing? Bye.